Okay, good evening, and thank you for joining us for tonight's hybrid presentation, Future Energy Options for New Mexico. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware that this presentation is being recorded. My name is Kristen O'Hara, Director of Interpretation at Pajarito Environmental Education Center, or PEEC, located in Los Alamos, New Mexico. I will be the moderator for tonight's talk. Okay, so PEEC, if you're not aware, is the nonprofit organization that operates the Los Alamos Nature Center, which is open from 10 to 4, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Visit our website, pecnature.org, peaknature.org, to learn more about visiting the Nature Center and other upcoming events. We are, of course, only able to do programming like this tonight thanks to our wonderful members and donors. So I'd like to send a special shout out to you for your generous support. To learn more details about becoming a PEEC member or donor, visit peaknature.org or grab, if you're in person today, a membership brochure on your way out. Okay, Jordan, can you next slide? Thank you so much. Just a few logistics before we start this presentation. Tonight's talk is, like I said, a hybrid, meaning there are folks tuning in virtually over Zoom and people in the room at the Nature Center. For those tuning in on Zoom, please note that you will not be able to see our presenter this evening. His video will not be on. You will just see his slides. For questions, our presenter will be taking questions via Zoom chat and in person from the in-person audience. To find the chat feature in Zoom, look for the Zoom app menu bar, type your questions to the PEEC moderator in the chat window, and I will relay them to Jordan at the end of his presentation. Quick side note for those of you on Zoom, you may experience a delay as we hear questions from the room. Just bear with us, don't worry. You haven't gone offline. We will be on in a second after we hear those questions and try our very best to remember to repeat them. If for some reason we do not remember, please just kindly, gently remind us. We are only human, so a brief reminder is great. Okay, and if you would like to change how you are seeing this program, you can go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen and click the view icon to change how you're viewing. Okay, and then as a reminder to everyone here tonight, please fill out the short evaluation that's coming into your email after this program. We love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so without further ado, Jordan Garcia is joining us this evening. Jordan is Los Alamos County's Deputy Utility Manager of Power Supply, in charge of the pre-schedule and real-time regulatory and generation resource supply. This includes preparing annual power forecasts that include monthly, daily, and hourly updates to match generation to load. A portion of the staff work the real-time desk 24/7, 365, performing transmission and marketing functions for the Los Alamos Power Pool, including Sandia National Laboratory and Kirtland Air Force Base. Additional staff operates hydro generation resources at El Vado and Abiquiu. Jordan has a master's degree in business administration and has been with county for over 10 years. Jordan, I'm going to give the mic over to you and monitor the chat. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen. Welcome. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to say thank you for joining us tonight, and I want to do my best to educate everyone as much as possible on what's going on in Los Alamos and how we're meeting our electrical needs. We're going to start off with a brief history of how we came about. We started in 1985. We're a partnership with the Department of Energy, NNSA, and the County of Los Alamos. We're going to briefly talk about what is an IRP and its analysis and its results. The resource position, key implementation dates that we're looking at into the future for some of our resources. Go through some of the agreements that exist today that allow us to bring in power to support our needs. Some policy recommendations that we made to the Board of Public Utilities, real focus on reliability, operational impacts, what the DOE, NNSA, and their partnership thinks about this IRP. We did do this venture jointly this time, so it analyzed our load together and they've been a major player throughout this whole process. And what did the IRP tell us? What do we need to do? What do we need to be ready to do if those options just are off the table or something happens? Biggest thing, electric production, we comprise of certain resources right now. Some resources belong to the laboratory, some resources belong to Los Alamos County. We have a mix of hydro, coal, solar, distributed energy resources. We have utility scale solar. We also we've entered into a joint PPA that's part wind, part solar, and it's firmed up by the vendor, delivered to us on an hourly basis. And then the laboratory has a natural gas unit that we manage as well. Move that. Big thing about our partnership, like I said, we started in 1985. Our first joint ventures was San Juan Coal. We had a 36 megawatt share of San Juan. We preceded that with Laramie River Station, which is a coal plant in Wheatland, Wyoming, that we have a share of, a lifetime of the plant power purchase agreement. And we have the 2 hydro dams that we built at El Vado and Abiquiu. And we also do most of the purchasing. We have, in addition to that, we have DOE hydro energy shares coming out of Lake Powell, and it comes over into our system. The laboratory has a big share of that. We have a much smaller share, but it's a good resource chunk. Again, we did the bonding originally for San Juan, LRS, and the hydros. We carried those for 30 years. It was paid off in 2015 for those assets. We did some environmental bonds. We get really favorable rates because we're a municipality, so this is part of the partnership and the benefit. But they help us. They are 80% of our load, and they share an 80% of the cost of all of this. So we have some outstanding environmental bonds from 2010. That was also the low flow generator that we built in 2011 on Abiquiu, and the 2014 bonds, which we took out to do the selective catalytic reduction system at San Juan to reduce regional haze. Again, we share these costs. They're based on the energy consumption of each entity, roughly about 80-20, and it's been that way for the past 37 years. LAC is the operating agent. We own most of the resources and we have most of the contracts, but we do share and put these into a pool. This is just a brief overview of what we do. It's a lot of words up there, but most of it is we take a look at what we're projecting to use in terms of electrically every hour of every day, and we put a number to it. And then we put a number to what kind of generation do we need? How are we going to get it? We work really closely with P&M. They are our balancing area. They're almost like our babysitter, you could say, okay? We have to do our part. We have to match our load demands with our generation, but they are ultimately responsible for us, and we pay them for some services to ensure that we have adequate supply. Everything that we do on this side, with the exception of ownership resources, we also do for Sandia National Lab and Kirtland Air Force Base. So let's get into the IRP. What is an IRP? Sort of like I talked about on a smaller scale, our load needs. We project our needs out into the future using the most available information that we have. Big load drivers for the county and the lab are LANCE, the Linear Accelerated Facility, supercomputing, right? Other mission-driven items at the lab, and then our residential and commercial usage on this side. We take a look at what we're going to use. The window for an IRP is about 5 years. We want to plan for 3 to 5 years. That's sort of our planning window for this. Okay, it was important this time because we have a couple of huge milestones that are coming up. Our contract with the laboratory expires in 2025. We're hoping to renew that. Also, San Juan will be shutting down in this month. We were planning to go to the 30th. We're looking at about the 24th to the 26th of this month. We will no longer have San Juan coal as a resource. So we need to look and see what's available out there and what's going to meet our needs. The laboratory, you look at, not only do you look at the overall energy usage, you look at a time, right? When is the usage the highest? You know, do we peak in the summer? Do we peak in the winter? What resources are available at that time, right? And what are putting out the energy to be able to meet our load? So there's a lot that goes into it, and quite a bit of consideration for each individual load and the generation available at the time. Like I said, it's a 5-year planning window. and we're going out 20 years to see, what we need and how we need to plan for that. It also gives us some pivot strategies. One of the biggest one I'll mention right now, and you can carry it through this thing, is wind. Wind is really favorable. New Mexico is a great place for it, but there is no transmission to move the wind. Okay, you need this. We deal in a product and a service. Sometimes they come together, sometimes they're separated. The energy is the product. We try to get that delivered. That's how you can, use all your stuff at your home. Run your refrigerator, run your ACs, right? That's the energy that runs that. The service is the transmission. How does it get here? How do we get it to your doorstep, right? Everything above the big substations, that's what we deal in. Everything for this that goes to your house, that's a distribution system. So that's kind of a separate matter. So we're talking about everything upstream of the major transformers and substations. The IRP process, we identified 6 different things that we wanted to look at and be evaluated here for each individual resource. We're looking at costs, the risk, sustainability, operational metrics, which they're all broken out into some subsections. Resiliency, which is when is it available? Is it there to meet our needs? And diversification. It takes that all the resources that it's identified that might be available to us. You see gas-fired, wind, solar, battery, nuclear, even geothermal. We put them all into a mix and see kind of what pops out. It all goes in, funnels, runs its huge algorithm, throws everything it can at it. Is it going to be a good market? Going to be a bad market? Where does everything fall out? And out pops the results. Some of the big considerations that we had during this process, as you can see, this is WEC right here. This is the Western Electric Coordinating area. It goes all the way from Mexico to Northern Canada. We're all combined, right? We all need the system to be in good shape in order for any of us we're all reliant on each other, is what I'm trying to say. A lot of things are going on in the West. We're losing coal generation, traditional coal generation. We're losing some of traditional nuclear generation. A lot of it, we're bringing on more renewable, intermittent resources to meet those loads. We're having once in 100-year events every couple of years, right? And so, we're trying to plan for all of these, and then how we're doing that. With the retirement of coal, there's quite a bit of reliance on the gas, right? Natural gas units. But one of the biggest storage units in California, it's Aliso Canyon. I think you saw a few years ago it was leaking and they had a little problem. They've only approved it for a fraction of storage than what it was previously available. So it's really hard for the transportation system for natural gas to catch up with our needs. Yeah. So there's a question in the room that says, what is Aliso Canyon? Aliso Canyon was an underground natural gas storage facility in California that the gas system they'd pump it in, it'd hold in, but it had a leak. And during this time, it let out, I don't know how many millions of cubic feet or billions of cubic feet of natural gas, but they've only allowed it to hold a fraction of that at this point. And that affects our natural gas. So we have a huge reliance on the natural gas system now for natural gas generators to be able to meet what the coal units were doing at the time. So just keep that in mind. Our local constraints that we look at, we've all seen the mission. We know the mission's picking up for the laboratory, right? So we're very close to approaching our limitation for importing energy. All right, we have to be safe. We have to be redundant. Right now, our import limit is roughly around 112 megawatts of capacity. And with their new loads, supercomputing, the mission at TA55, all that good stuff, they're looking at going above that by about 2027. So we need to start planning. And what that is we're looking at putting in a third transmission line. This is a current transmission line we have. We have 2 feeds into our system, into Los Alamos. We take it, this is over here by the river, Santa Fe River on Buckman Road, comes up, goes into this area. We have another one that's come to Reeves line from Albuquerque, from the south. It feeds into White Rock, the substation between Bandelier and White Rock. And now we're looking at a proposed third line, roughly 13 miles. You want to take it, cut across, and then run a parallel with Reeves. Now, this is key to our planning too, right? Because we have all this load that we're planning for. What are we going to do if we don't build the line? How are we going to do this? We're not going to be able to increase our load growth, or we're going to have to seriously add on-site generation to be able to manage this. So this alters what kind of resources are available to us, where they're available to us, and how we're going to get it here. Awesome. I'll do my best. Okay. Supply side technology. So this is, again, remember the high side that we're talking about, and not people on their roofs and things like that. These are all the assessments of the resources that we looked at. We looked at thermal units. Well, you'll hear me refer to thermal units. They're mostly going to be natural gas or burning some kind of carbon energy. Okay. These are the three different categories that we put them in, and the considerations involved with. It's inconsistent thermal, but we'll get back to thermal. We're going to look at a simple cycle gas unit, which will only run at peak times when we need it. But we really might need these resources into the future if we want to provide reliable energy electric service to you all. We looked at nuclear, which is a carbon-free power project that we've been in for the past, I think, 5 years. And we're going to have a decision point coming up in the next couple of months that we need to look at. Hybrid. So these are power purchase agreements. We have an agreement with a company called Uniper. It's 15 megawatts of wind and solar. So they built wind resources. They haven't built solar resources yet. They will be online soon. And they're providing us 15 megawatts around the clock, every hour on the hour. And they're firming it up. How are they firming it up? They have an agreement with the Navajo Tribal Energy Center. So they own Four Corners Coal Plant. So that's how they're able to give us these products. Firm renewables, solar and battery, geothermal, fuel cells. We looked at all these on geothermal. From this point, we took a look at what was feasible, what was most cost effective, and then we made a choice of what we wanted to leave into the big analysis and what we might kick out. And some of those, this is all pretty much based on economics and cost prohibitiveness. That includes how do we get it to our system? And it could be the transmission that kicks out these resources. Just a quick example. We looked at a solar facility in Utah. The cost for that facility was a little bit short of $30 per megawatt. But to purchase the transmission to get it here added $20. So a $30 resource became a $50 resource because of the way transmission works and how it's sold and how it's marketed. And we have to get it here. We can't invest into a resource and have it stranded, right? So we need the transmission as well. So those are the kinds of considerations we look at before we run it into the major analysis portion. Looked at different types of battery storages, lithium ion, vanadium flow. Parts of these, they're looking at what's commercial. The big thing is commercialization, right? What's out there. There's a lot of new technology coming out, and it's great and it's fabulous, and we really want it to work. But right now, some of these, we're chasing kilowatts, right? We're talking about kilowatts and we're chasing gigawatts. So we need a much bigger scale for some of these new technologies that are coming in. We really want to see what happens with them. With that, this is a quick analysis of levelized cost of energy. Just from this point forward, these are our existing resources. As you can see, based upon the new resources that are involved, which is the light blue square, we have some pretty good resources available to us. And this is based on the investment that we made 37 years ago and throughout the contract period with the power pool. We're planning on keeping all of our current resources, LRS included, Alvado, Abiquiu, our hydro allocations from the federal government, and we have to use the natural gas turbine from the lab. These are some of the quick and dirty analysis and costs for some of the new resources we're looking at. Our SMR, the CFPP technology. There you can see at $58. We've evaluated some solar on Lanel system. That all went into our projections. They have about 10 megawatts of area that we're going to put in that we know we're going to work with. We're looking at RICE units, which is reciprocating internal combustion engines that are really small but can be powerful, and simple cycle gas turbines, as well as solar and battery combined. And this this is sort of what our true competitors, that's the market, right? If we can't build the resource, what do we have to do? We have to go out and buy it on a short term or even on a contractual basis. And this is sort of the outlook of what we're looking at. There's a base case, a high case, and a low case. We're going to talk about that into our analysis throughout this. Base case is sort of a nice in between. This is what we think is going to happen. This is kind of realistic. Low case is everything drops out, low prices, things kind of don't materialize the way we expected them to. And a high case is everything is booming. You got inflation, everything, costs are high, everything getting thrown into it. So you can see it's quite a bit there. Just as a quick overview, we bought power. We didn't buy power yesterday, but power traded for $1,300 per megawatt yesterday. So this heat wave going through California, it's a real thing, and it's very impactful, even on a small scale for us. Again, so here's our portfolio. So what we did is we broke down the most likely resources that we had availability and access to and could get to our system. And we made these series of portfolios, 12 of them to be exact. You can see some of them are SMR, solar, wind, and storage, SMR, solar, wind. This is simple cycle gas turbine. We threw gas in the mix. We threw the rice units in the mix. What else we have? Some bigger shares of the SMR. Right now, we are looking at our SMR of 8 megawatts, and that was the analysis moving forward. We also threw in sort of a San Juan replacement of SMR to get us out into the future to do an economic analysis for it. You can see the battery storage, what it put us at, the projected photovoltaic and wind into this system, excuse me. So we're looking at this for this particular portfolio. We're going to build 380 megawatts of photovoltaic, 135 megawatts of wind, and 55 megawatts of battery storage. This is the low case. You can see it's a lot different from the numbers before. Just real quick, you look at the magnitude, 578. I think that's one of the lowest portfolios. We're gonna, 585 to meet our future load. That's what we have to build to be able to meet our load in a base case. In a low case, looks like we only have to build about 307 megawatts. So a far cry, about 200 and some megawatts. But this is over a 20-year period, right? Staging it in different time frames. And then this is the high case. This is if think about every project that ever got approved for the laboratory, got funded, and everything was coming in. This is what our high case would look like. We're going to need roughly 865 at the lowest megawatts. These are big resources, right? We have a 7% stake in San Juan 4. San Juan 4 is 507 megawatts. So we're building that kind of unit. It's enormous. These are the portfolio evaluation factors. It went from there, we talked about the 6 items I highlighted earlier. So we want to pick the lowest cost. We want to pick the highest in sustainability, lowest in risk, lowest in operational exposure, highest in reliability, and the highest in diversification, right? We don't want all our eggs in one basket. Some of these have subsets that we broke into. So you can see sustainability. What we did for us, because we have a goal for 2040 to be carbon neutral, all of our portfolios meet our sustainability goals. But how much we have left over. So our carbon neutral definition is very specific, right? We have to offset our generation. And it's nice because it gives us flexibility to meet load. When our hydros are running, our load is very low in the springtime. Okay, but runoff is coming, so we have a lot of extra power. But in the winter, our hydros are not on. When we peak, the county of Los Alamos peaks we're a winter peaker. The lab itself is a summer peaker. It'll peak in August or July or September, whenever we have a heat wave, right? But the county itself peaks in the wintertime. We peak around 7 o'clock at night. There's no wind and there's no solar when we peak. So our carbon neutral goal was written with that in mind, that we are able to meet our load at night, which is most likely available as a thermal unit, right? To meet our load, but we can still meet our carbon neutral goal. And so that's what's sort of there into the future. We're looking at market exposure for risk. Number 3, risk. It's broken down into 2 different pieces. Average market exposure, that's a sale and a purchase, right? If we're heavy, we're gonna have to be selling. We're at the mercy of the market. If we're buying, we're gonna be at the mercy of the market, right? So it's announcing that stochastic simulation and portfolio cost. So what is the cost of this portfolio? The wind, the solar, the mixes, the batteries, the SMR, all that good stuff. Operational exposure, new resources subject to transmission. This is how we evaluated the wind, right? We didn't put wind in any of these portfolios for the first 10 years because there's no way to get wind into our system. We got the one piece, it was called Pattern Energy. It's been built, it's roughly 1,200 megawatts of capacity. We have a small share of that at 15 through our partner Uniper. The rest of that energy is mostly going to Los Angeles. There's going to be another big resource built around 3,500 megawatts of wind capacity. They have built a transmission line straight from the middle of New Mexico all the way to Southern California. It's not even going to intermix in our system at all. So that's after that, transmission is very difficult. It's very expensive. We're looking right now for our system, which is really small, a 115 kV system. It's about $1 million a mile. Okay, so all these add up, and you have to have a big resource mix or a big site of wind and solar to be able to make that economical. What are we gonna? Weather dependent new resource. How available is it? Is it only available when the sun shines? Is it only available when the wind blows, right? Or is it more versatile? That's what we're looking at. Average planning reserve margin for reliability. There's two sections there. Average planning reserve margin. Are we high or are we low? We traditionally, throughout our the history of the Los Alamos Power Pool, we've operated under a negative reserve margin. We've only supplied about 75% of our need, and we make up the other 25% through short-term purchase contracts. This has been worked out very well for us up until the point where it's getting very hard to find resources now that are available. This heat wave in California, for example, this pricing, that's how they build in the risk, right? You're trying to motivate someone to let go of some power, and it's $1,300 to do that. So we wanted to, with what's going on in the system and how the scarcity of the market, we needed to flip. So now we're shooting for a positive reserve margin to the tune of 14 to 16% is what we're looking at. Dispatchable new resources. If we're going to be heavy, we have to be able to handle that. Remember, we have to balance our load and our generation, right? We can't be out of balance. So what do? How do we balance? Most of the time, you can either curtail a unit or you can sell it. You have to have the ability to be able to do that if you're going to complete your contractual obligations to our babysitter PNM, right? So we have to look at resources that give us the ability to do this and manage, again, serving our customers reliably. And diversification, just a number of new generation types, right? Having widespread access to different resources, it helps our case mostly. If we build solar resources, if we can spread out the sites, maybe sun will be shining in one where we have a heavy monsoon in the other portion, right? So how do we diversify, and does it help us, or does it hurt us? So this is a brief overview of the results. Now, it's very important to remember about the weighting. So this is a straight weight for all the different resources. So if they had two different metrics within them, we split them equally. If they only had one, they got the whole weighting. Okay. And you can see portfolio one was number one. What was portfolio one? That was the SMR with solar, with wind, and with battery storage. Where did it come in? Cost. You can see it's under 3. That's number one. Sustainability, all these are 0. Remember that it was lower because we wanted it to be sustainable. All of the portfolios met our goals, so they all got weighted equally on that portion. Market exposure and portfolio cost. You can see that's not the cheapest. Portfolio 5 was the cheapest. Well, actually, I think portfolio 4 is the cheapest, but it's not too far off, right? New resource subject to transmission. What's the risk involved with that? You can see fairly low. Weather dependent resources, low. 53. Sorry, everyone that's online. I'm going through each individual category and just talking about its effect on it. The planning reserve margin, you can see it is 9.31. So it's a little bit more exposed because all the wind, all the solar, we have to take it, right? So part of this, I just want to get into the planning reserve margin for the renewable resources. Solar, for example, peaks at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, noon and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. After that, from 9 o'clock to then, it's ramping up. After 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it starts ramping down. When does the laboratory and the county peak? We peak around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 to 6 in the afternoon is when we peak. So we have to build those resources. We have to overbuild them so that whatever we need in our peak will be available, right? When the sun's going down. So that we have to manage all those hours where it's really high or really low. So that goes into the weather dependency and as well as the planning reserve margin. So it's going to be high and expose us more during the times when we don't need it. Dispatchable resources, what kind of flexibility do we have? You can see what's the lowest one right there. That's P11. I think that's 36 megawatts of the small modular reactor, right? So you can see as we get up there and our planning reserve margins are bigger, that gives us more flexibility, so it weights better on this scale. Diversification, how many different resources do we have? I think it looked for a minimum of 4, could have been 5. And then where it ranked. So you can see there's number 1 right there, which is solar, wind, storage, and the small modular reactor. Now, alternative weightings. We talked with our partners at the laboratory because some things might mean different to us. For us, we think reliability is really important. Sustainability, of course, is very important. And as well as what we talk about, emphasis on reducing market exposure. So how much are we having to sell? How much are we having to buy to minimize those? So we had them evaluate sort of what this was the equal. So this is what we just went over. That's the base case. If on the online, if you can see it, there's a sensitivity, a base case. The new one, which is reducing market exposure. You can see portfolio, the portfolio that's the top in the equal rating does pretty well under the second one, market exposure, and does well under weather exposure. Okay, so that doesn't change much. But when we go to reliability and dispatchability, everything changes quite a bit. You can see a higher planning reserve margin ends up winning out, and that's probably a more expensive resource, but it also has a lot. If you look, it's a SMR 36 solar wind with reciprocating or rotary internal combustion engine. So that planning reserve margin, I think, is 16%, but it gives us a lot of flexibility. We can ramp up the small modular reactor is built so that we can ramp up and ramp down. It's going to have that ability. It has 2 different ways that it's going to be able to do that. It can move the rods in and out, and it can also bypass steam. So that's one of the benefits of looking at these kind of reactors into the future. The rice doesn't have to be turned on. It can be turned on in an instant and be ready to rock and roll. And we can do that at a normal pressure of the gas system. So we can do it off of one of our, just, in the county anywhere. So that one went out under the dispatchability portion. So we're working with the laboratory, what's important to you? How do we do this? How do we want to move forward? So these are all part of the evaluation thing. Net present value, portfolio cost. It's that's one of the big, it was the cost that was calculated in those. We're gonna go through here. You can see where everyone ranked in terms of the cost. And this was with the equal ranking, right? $464 million for 20 years. Now, this is just resource cost. It doesn't include our other contracts, transmission, internally, those kinds of things. This is strictly resources only. So it's a major cost moving forward into the future. And you can see there's about $100 million difference between, well, $80 million difference between the highest and the lowest moving forward. IRP result. The preferred resource portfolio is solar, wind, energy storage, and the CFPP the small modular reactor we've been talking about. We're going to talk about simple cycle gas and reciprocating engines because, again, we have a problem with the wind. We have a problem with off-peak, right? So on-peak energy is when you wake up, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning to about 10 o'clock at night. Low load hours are from midnight to 6 in the morning-ish, roughly. Right now, we used to call it high load because that's when people peaked and that's when they needed the most energy. And that was when energy was the most expensive. Right now, energy is the most expensive. If you've heard of the term of a duck curve, right? So when all the renewables are starting to drop off because the sun's going down or the wind stopping and blowing, all of the energy usage is going up. Most people peak between 6 o'clock at night and 9 o'clock at night, right? The sun is pretty much going down and you need a ton of generation to ramp up to be able to meet these people's needs, right? Commercial, residential, the whole system. It's really hard to do that. And that's when the price is most expensive. But now we're seeing this inverse as well. So that's going to stay, that's going to remain. But prices also used to be most expensive about 10 o'clock in the morning to about 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's called high load. We're seeing a shift. That's the cheapest hours now because solar is so readily available and abundant on the system. That is when you want people using the most energy, is when it's the cheapest. But we're having a hard time filling the gap at night, right? So those low load hours, 1, 2 in the morning, that's when pricing is the highest. That's how we analyze risk here. It's priced into the system, right? So we look at pricing. It's not available. It's more expensive. So low load wise, we need to figure out something. That's very scary to me. That's the thing that keeps me up at night, is figuring out how we're going to meet our load at night. And batteries are a good mix right now, but the batteries that we evaluated here, batteries are going to be part of the mix no matter what. They're good. They're very cheap, but it all depends on how you structure it, right? So right now they're supposed to last about 4 hours of battery life. So they're supposed to carry you for 4 hours. And you got to remember, when a battery's charging, that's all it's doing. It's not available for much else, right? So you want to get it charged and then discharge it. So how do you do that? Well, you have to overbuild the resources that you're using to fill it, right? That's become a load now. So you have to fill that, get it ready, and then pump out the energy. So it's all of it is very difficult to handle and something that we're trying to keep a close eye on into the future. So again, the pivot strategies, we mentioned the simple cycle here wasn't part of the original resource, but we shifted to that because of the nighttime load, because of having all these renewables and intermittents on the system. How are we going to manage them? I don't know if we can do away with thermals. We'd really like to, but for right now, to keep everybody's lights on reliably, I don't think we can do it. And the IRP essentially said that we need to look into getting some kind of contract or resource that can meet the needs. We're talking about the lack of resource position. So this is just Los Alamos. And what we're trying to show here is sort of the inverse of all the resources that we own and what we provide to the laboratory. So this is basically a high level view at our relationship with the lab and how we're moving forward. Our load is roughly 118,000 megawatt hours annually. And these are all the resources that we own to be able to meet that. So we generate roughly 236,000 megawatt hours and our load is 118. So we provide the laboratory about 144,000 megawatt hours. But what does this also say? The laboratory, we have to look at our contract again, that expires in 2025. We feel really strongly that we're going to renew it, and we have a great partnership, and we need each other. We've proven through the other IRP in 2017 that we are better off together. And there's this big economies of scale that we gain with them as a partner. So if something were to happen and we weren't to have the laboratory, we are oversupplied, greatly oversupplied in our system. So right now we could claim carbon neutrality in 2025 if we really wanted to, or if we were on our own. This is an example of Los Alamos's load. The black line, solid line, that's what we're projecting our load to be for the next 21 years. And this is a bar graph with all of our resources that are available. As you can see, 22, 23, 24, we have our San Juan replacement energy, and that's mostly to meet our contractual obligations with the laboratory. Here you can see, again, greatly oversupplied. The CFPP in yellow that we're hopefully planning on bringing online, and into Los Alamos. And then in 2043, where we lose LRS, we expect Laramie River Station's lifetime to be around 2040 to 2042. We'll retire that unit. Now going to the DOE. Their load is about a 410,000 megawatt hours, but the resources they have between the combustion turbine, and we put the thermal resources in black, green are renewable or non-carbon emitting. So we have the WAPA Hydro, the 10 megawatt on-site solar that we're working with them to build currently, and you know, they're shy about 200,000 megawatt hours. So this is illustrative of that, you know, that we need each other for this relationship. But Los Alamos has to be very careful moving forward, right, with how we view this relationship and how we treat it, because we are oversupplied, and that is a risk. It's a good position to be in this environment, but it is a risk moving forward. This is our combined load. Sorry, this didn't come out very good, but this is, what is it? I think it's their CT. That's their combustion turbine there. That didn't pop up very much. There it is right there. See, yeah, the Lano CT, 25 megawatts. So that bar right there, that is their CT. But you can see sort of how we're positioned moving into the future. These gold bars, we haven't built a resource yet. So this gold bar is indicative of purchase power agreements. These are short-term agreements or something that we would need to meet our load. So we have to fill these gaps moving into the future, the gold gaps. That's what we're looking at. That's what the IRP intended to do. Some big key dates here. You know, we went through the process. We talked with the power pool to get their buy-in on our IRP. You know, we were with them throughout the whole process, but we wanted to present it to them, get their thoughts. Talked about the weightings, right? What was important to them, what's important to us. We met that meeting. We presented a draft implementation plan to our Board of Public Utilities to sort of, you know, how are we going to move forward in the future, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And then we presented it to the council. We're hoping to formalize our plan here in September. We're going to present. We did some things. We had to do an RFI, a request for information, or a non-binding RFP, so to speak, from resources to see what was available to us right now. And we're going to present that in October. So I really hope you all tune in for that one at the Board of Public Utilities in October. Completing of our interagency agreement. This is a key for our contract moving forward. The NNSA has a contract limitation of 10 years, but all these resources are at least 20, right? Our 15-year contract with Uniper for the wind and solar, that's about as low as it gets. That CFPP, the SMR project, we're looking at around 40 years of bonding, right? So we need to have the contractual assurances that we'll have them to be our partner for that long. And so we're working through that process. We think there's a way to do it through Western Area Power Agency, which is a federal government entity. They can enter contracts up to 40 years. So these are the things we're looking at, and a way to move forward and keep the ball rolling. Our post-2025 tentative agreement, we'd like by next year, next summer. We need a year of approval process, but we need a couple of years to plan for this if something were to happen, because again, we're oversupplied, so we need that time. We're moving forward with the negotiations. I think they're going very well. Like I said, we really recognize, both of us, that we need each other, and it's just a lot more efficient to work together. And the IRP will be updated in 2025, probably under the new contract, and we have to keep these going every 3 years, right? The market's changing, everything's changing. I think we saw more change in the past 3 years than I saw in the past 35. So, you know, we have to keep up with what's going on out there. Again, the carbon-free power project, this is big. You know, they've just completed a class 3 estimate of the resource, and we're hoping to view that soon and present that to everyone to stay into the project through the combined operating license submittal to the NRC. we'd like to do a 2-year extension of right now we have a 25 megawatt San Juan replacement deal that starts flowing in October. We'd really like a 2-year extension on that. It's going to be very difficult to be able to build a resource by 2025, right? So we think more likely even if you wanted to build a new resources, to be able to, for PNM to do an analysis on that, it's running about 2 years behind right now. Because of all the interconnection requests, all the people that are building resources out on their system, they have to analyze these. They've hired third-party consultants and stuff, so they're behind. So we'd like to buy ourselves some time, do a 2-year extension on a 25 megawatt deal, and then that's when our new resources will take hold. In addition to that, we're not seeing a major load increase until about 2027. That's the earliest that we see it. So this 25 would get us by sort of the same load where we're at right now. It's not too much of a change, but then when we see the big increase, we'll have the carbon-free resources online to be able to meet those. Again, agreements, these are just a list of agreements that we have to work on into the future to make sure that this happens. You know, our ECA with the NNSA and the lab, the interagency agreement to be able to contract for longer periods of time. This is just a description of that. And you know, doing what we do for Sandia Kirtland, their contract expires next year, next December, and they don't have a replacement right now. So we're really working with them to try to get that going. And they want to be able to open themselves up to do contracting like we did and get some carbon-free resources. So the federal government's limited, right? They have to look at the cheapest resources, unfortunately. But there is a memo going around, and there's hope that they might be able to value things that don't, are non-carbon emitting and give them more weight. And they can also enter into 20-year agreements. So there's a light at the end of this tunnel. I think everybody recognizes it. It's just a matter of working through it and getting there. And we hopefully, it's sooner rather than later, but we really feel good about what's happening right now at this level. That's it. We talked about resource acquisition for Board of Public Utility Policy. We just talked about the contracting ability, right? How far do we go on a limb? Do we plan for them to come along? That's a financial risk, right? Do we want to take it? How far do we want to go? If we want to do it at all? So we need some help and some guidance to be able to say, hey, what's the risk level that we want to take? That we have a strategic policy for electrical energy resource. We had the FER committee a couple of years ago, the Future Energy Resources Committee. That's sort of the sheet of music that we've been singing by for the past few years. It's available on our website. You can pull it up under the documents and see sort of all the decisions that we made in the past few years. That's been sort of our guiding document, right? It was adopted and we've been looking at it. The strategic policy for distributed energy, distributed energy resources are a big deal right now. Putting solar on your house, other different kinds of resources, batteries, power walls, those kinds of things. How do we plan for those? How are we going to treat them in the future? What else? Review and consider BPU policy, Los Alamos resiliency. So the La Res new committee and some of their recommendations, what do they mean to us exactly? How are we going to adopt them? Does it change what we've been doing from the past? Or what kind of consideration do we look into the future? So these are some of the things that we think we need guidance on before we kind of really power forward into the future. These are more of note points and something that we really value and is important to us. And what time is it? I'm sorry. Geez, I'm sorry, guys. Let me hurry up now. This is huge, okay? Reliability. The intermittency of renewable resources, we've talked about it to death. And they're great resources. They have a spot in our mix, but we have to handle what happens when a cloud comes over or what happens when the wind stops. Okay, how are we going to handle that? That's the biggest thing to us. Batteries are a solution for a certain period, right? You have extended periods. We've had extended periods, I think a couple of Septembers ago, where we have 2 weeks where we have limited sunshine, right? This winter, there was a period there we had limited sunshine. For example, I think it was 2 Januaries ago, we had that major snowstorm. our solar site didn't put out any energy at all. If the solar site was more than 10% covered with snow, it doesn't output any energy. So these are the things we got to look at in the future. Yeah, you build them up a little bit, things of that, but that's a floating resource, right? But it's indicative of some of the issues that are going out there. There are other ways to mitigate it, but some of the things going out there. Again, when is it producing? How is it producing? Timing of production, our load profile. We need the energy at 7 o'clock, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's when people are using. So we need the resource that can supply the energy at 7 o'clock. Operational impacts, right now we have 6 people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they rotate monitoring. Now they do 3 different jobs. They do generation, reliability, generation operations, transmission operations, and they do marketing, right? When we have to mix, all of this is about forecasting. We have to look an hour or 2 ahead of time. All these different market products that are out there, we have time limits, right? We have to predict what's coming online. And if not, you're at the mercy, right? It's taking and giving and giving and taking. So we have to monitor this. We're going to have to look at more staff to be able to do that. It might be a whole real-time desk, so another 6 people. But to be able to manage this and output it, it's going to come with operational risk and operational, expanding that we're going to have to be able to manage. That's the biggest thing. Third-party support, we might have to look outside to be able to manage this. I know we're going to have to do it probably for the forecasting, see the cloud cover and what's going to be available. Because if you're off, there's some really big penalties involved. DOE NSA feedback, let's just go through here. They support a 2-year extension of the 25 megawatt. They want us to look more at PPAs. We need to reevaluate this. The new IRA has changed quite a bit of what's going on out there. Previously, nonprofit entities couldn't take advantage of tax credits, but that's not the case anymore. The Inflation Reduction Act changed quite a bit. So we're going to have to reevaluate some of this. Emphasis on reliability. They want firm power. We need firm power to supply our labs and their national mission. And they're in support of interim transition resources. This is what we're talking about. It's for the gas resources and thermal units to be able to reliably serve our community. Interagency agreement, climate action plan from the Biden administration. We're waiting for that, but we think we can meet those goals when they do come out. And renewable solar PV. We think we can handle 10 to 20 megawatts easy as part of our load. Anything as part of that, we're going to need a lot more battery to be able to manage. So it's something there. Recommendations, finish batteries. Of course, continue our work with DOE. Possibly standalone contract over that 2-year period. We got to worry about the contracting, right? But that's it essentially, is getting into that. RFI for indicative pricing. Again, we just did that. We're hoping to put together a presentation in October, so I really hope you join us there. Issue an RFI, RFP if we got anything favorable. We're going to have to present that. Investigate thermal resources for our firming. Economic analysis with there's a new market. It's called the EIM out of California. It's called the Energy Imbalance Market. It's a game changer for utilities. So we got to evaluate that with the resources that exist to see if we can take advantage of that kind of market. Update and amend BPU adopted policies, update load forecast and timing, and keep monitoring the CFPP and potentially staying in it if it's still viable. Oh, let me go now. Did I do something wrong? I get stuck. Sorry, technical difficulties, everyone. I only got a couple more. It won't. Yeah. Oh man, people are prepared, locked and loaded. Oh, sorry, I can get that. Sorry, everyone. Bear with us for a second. Oh, went completely underneath. Thank you. How do even for I can change it from here. I'll just stay right here. Oh, okay.
Oh, I think it's the entire computer.
Did it freeze? That's pretty bad when the computer's telling me to shut up.
For some reason, it just didn't
Okay.
flag light for a minute there.
So, which one's new?
And then up is
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh. Oh, it's a PDF. Is that the last one? Oh, that's the last one. Okay. We're good. Okay. So that's the end. And with that, we'll stand for any questions. Thank you for enduring that.
So this is from Robert Gibson. Do you expect the continued Southwest drought to impact available WAPA power?
Yes, it already has, Mr. Gibson. What's happening is we're getting about half of our original entitlement through the contract from the actual dam. The rest is being made up on the market. And it's a serious problem because what happened is WAPA was creating all this energy and they were pumping it into the system. And then all of a sudden they became our competitor now, right? We're all competing for the same resources, the available megawatts on the system. And you can see that it's made a major impact on what's going on. In addition to that, we are keeping an eye on it because how we calculated what our renewable or non-carbon emitting assets were compared to our carbon emitting assets, we now have to look at that individually and see what was flowing that was carbon free, what's flowing that's not. So we're already seeing that. And yes, it is a major player and it's one of the reasons for the big spike in pricing going forward.
Okay, we do have another question from, I can't see their full name, so I'm not going to say it in case I destroy it. Do the demand projections, including people charging electric vehicles and transitioning from gas to electric to heat their homes? Do the demand projections, including, yeah.
So yes, thank you very much for answering that question. I knew I needed to hit something and I forgot to hit it in the projection. So now in Los Alamos, we have a 50-year elimination of natural gas goal, so electrification. We planned some of that into this period. And we've also planned, we had our consultant evaluate the impact of EVs on our demand and what it would look like into the future. So those two aspects were considered as part of the low case, the base case and the high case. The base case, I think we went about 10 or 20% for electrification. And just so everybody knows, electrification is enormous. When we calculated this, we're looking at like a tripling of our load if the entire residential section and commercial section were to switch to electric. So it's an enormous impact and it's really hard to plan. And all the utilities now are just sort of getting into electrification and EV vehicles. So this is our first real serious iteration with it. And we think we'll get a lot better in our next round with the IRP.
Okay. Where would 30% hydrogen come from?
Right now, we left hydrogen out of the mix. There's a couple of sites that we're looking at. We're always looking at different availability for options. We said geothermal wasn't on there, but right now through UAMPS, we're looking at another geothermal project to see sort of, when is it generating? Does it meet our load, our profiles, right? For when we need the energy, what does it cost? And then we're also looking at that for hydrogen as well. But right now, hydrogen is still very new. Again, that word like commercially available, what's out there, what's available to us that can meet our needs right now. And there is a lot of developing in that area, but in terms of practical application, we couldn't see it yet. But again, we're doing this in 2025 again, and we anticipate that there'll be a few more resources available that weren't this time.
That's it for the questions over Zoom currently. Does anyone in the room have a question?
Yes, sir. I'll get there. So the question is asking about a graph previously. This one right here, he's referring to the gold bars on it that we said would be indicative of a purchase power agreement. Yes, sir. Absolutely. So this is just illustrative, right? This is those right there are the bars. So the question is that could be very expensive. Sorry, they can't hear you. Okay. So the question is that those gold bars and purchase power can be really expensive. And that's absolutely correct. And that's very much of a sort of wild card that we don't want, right? So we're going to close those gaps. That's what the IRP is attempting to do. But we don't have the resources yet. We're evaluating that wind, solar, battery, and CFPP to close that gap. Yes, sir. Right. Well, so you can see anytime we're at the mercy of the market right now with what's going on in the market, we're concerned. We really don't want to be in the position that we were in the past. We were very fortunate and it was a good economic decision at the time, but we're talking about liquidity. What's liquid megawatts available, energy available to us on the market? It's not there anymore, right? These utilities get punished if they let energy out. So you have to motivate them. Those are the $1,700 pricing per megawatt, right? We can have $1 million day very easily now. It's really expensive. And so we think we'd rather have the resources available to us and we can decide if we want to curtail them or if we want to offer them to the grid. That would be a much better position for Los Alamos County and the Los Alamos power pool with the DOE to be in moving into the future rather than relying on power that may or may not be there. So did that answer the question? Anything else? Yes, Abby. That's a good question. So the question in the room is Lano has a goal to be carbon neutral by 2035 if they have the combustion turbine. Oh, no, I'm sorry, carbon free. Yeah, you're right, carbon free. Right, carbon free by 2035, excuse me. And they have the combustion turbine. And that is true. And they have the combustion turbine until about 2038. So they're hoping, I think, to get some kind of waiver for that in the time being, but they are planning on meeting it. And again, that 2035, it's a rough estimate of what the Biden goals were, and it's written really specifically. So right now, the DOE and a lot of the federal entities or a lot of people have the option to buy what are called RECs, renewable energy credits. Just give you an example. In a few years ago, RECs would go for about 50 cents to $1. All right, and that's what you're doing is whenever you have a qualifying renewable resource that's generating energy, for every megawatt of energy they create a REC with it. Now you can buy the energy and you can buy the REC together, or you can separate it and actually just buy the RECs, right? So these are saying that you've bought renewable energy. RECs are now going for about $9, right, per megawatt. And the DOE has an option to just buy RECs and they can say that they're meeting their carbon neutral goals or carbon free goals. So right. Well, you know, that was illustrative because of the LRS, right? Right, the CT. Correct. Well, for right now, right? That's to be updated as they come out. So, and some of them they haven't been solidified yet. So a lot of it. So like I said, they have the option to buy RECs now, but also they need to invest in resources that are 24/7, right? So they want 50% of whatever their load is to be, they have to be invested in resources, which is where we come in and we're helping out, right? Our wind and solar deal, future solar deals, future wind deals, the carbon free power project, geothermal, if we ever go down that route. All those will help them meet those new mandates that they have from this administration. So I hope that answered the question, Abby. Is there anything else? Any questions?
No questions from online. It looks like nobody in the room. That's fine. That's great. Great questions from everyone. So since we're at the end, thank you so much for asking such wonderful questions, everyone. And thank you for joining us this evening.